Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club and my November wrap-up. I'm in such a weird mood today. I got bad vibes. I didn't like it. I was very confused for a long time and I'm really trying to follow my excitement. It was the perfect sort of cherry on top, crying, laughing at some points. My motivation to keep listening just plummeted from that. So I'm feeling a bit scattered and I'm not really sure where to start with this reading wrap up, and I feel like that is how the whole month has been in terms of my reading. I've been a bit scattered and not really focused, and I've just picked up book after book and not a lot of them stuck. So I have a lot of sort of false starts and a few books that I have read that I want to talk about, and yeah, but it's just a bit of a mixed bag this month, I guess. I had such great plans for Neurovember, the reading event by Kat at Curious Cat, and it went so nicely along with Nonfiction November. And so, yeah, I just had so many books that I was so interested in and eager to read. But as it turned out, I wasn't really in the mood to read nonfiction at all, I don't think. And some of the books that I tried that I really thought I was going to enjoy, I kind of didn't. And I was trying to not force myself to, push through books that I wasn't enjoying and just trying to read what I enjoy. But then I felt bad because I wasn't reading the books that I had planned to read for that event, and so then I wasn't sure what to do. So again, I kind of put myself in that situation where I put pressure on myself to participate in things and to support people and to not let anyone down. And I don't think that anyone will be let down. I don't think that Kat will be angry at me for not finishing all of the books for Neurovember, but that just makes my reading experience a bit not as fun because of how I'm thinking about it and like my own thoughts about participating in reading events and things. So yeah, that's something that I am going to have a think about for the new year, and how I can participate in things in a way that doesn't put so much pressure on myself. I'm kind of an all-in kind of person, and so when I find something that excites me, I'm like, yes, let's do this. And then I feel the pressure, and then it just sort of falters, and the excitement kind of goes away. So yeah. Anywho, this coffee is very good though. It's the first cup of the day and it's hitting the spot. So I did finish 4 books this month, which is pretty good for me, and 2 short stories that I want to talk about. But I figure let's just get the books out of the way that I have started and DNF'd or not finished yet. The first one is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. And I really thought that this was a book that I would enjoy, and maybe I would. I listened to it on audiobook and I couldn't really get into the story. I didn't feel like there was much of a story. And it is about a woman who is not feeling very good. She is depressed and things are sort of falling apart in her life. But it's not a very engaging story, at least not from the start, and at least not for me. It felt like a lot of back and forth and not really getting to the point. So it wasn't something that I was enjoying listening to. So I decided to try Divergent Mind by Jenara Nerenberg. And this is a nonfiction. It's a memoir, I think, but it's also mixed with facts, and I was hoping it would be more facts, and I was expecting it to be that. I'm not sure, maybe I just read the description wrong or I mixed it up with another book or something. But I had kind of hoped for it to be a sort of overview of different kinds of neurodivergence and just giving a little bit of basic knowledge about all of the different types and what that can entail for people who are living with that kind of neurodivergence and, combinations of them and all of that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't expecting there to be a lot of a memoir aspect. And I didn't get very far into it, but I read a few reviews about it, which maybe wasn't a good idea, but I did. And some of them said that it was a very heavy focus on the memoir part, and that made the whole book kind of narrow-minded in a way, and that it wasn't very inclusive, and it was very focused on like a white, privileged, successful woman, and a lot of people felt that their experience weren't included in this book, and so that made it a little bit pointless for me. Like, I'm sure her experience is just as important as anyone else's, but for me, I wanted a little bit more of a just, basic overview and an inclusive way to describe these different kinds of neurodivergence. I wasn't looking for a guide for a successful white woman. My motivation to keep listening just plummeted from that. I also started listening to Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, which is a new release, fiction release, contemporary fiction, and everyone loves Sally Rooney, and I have never really been intrigued by her as an author. I'm not really sure why, but I've just had this feeling, I guess, that she might not be for me, or like that her books might not be for me, but I figured I would give this a try. It's a new book, so I was like, yeah, sounds good. And there was also going to be a character on the autism spectrum, so it fit with the Neurovember event. Hold on. Okay, that's better. I felt like I was crouching looking into the camera, so I just had to raise it up a little bit. Anyways, so with Intermezzo, I just immediately felt an ick. Like, it starts out following one of the brothers that this story is about, and he is going to, I think it's been at his father's funeral, and he goes to visit a girl that he's seeing, or a woman, I guess, young woman, and they're down in a basement, and they're just, I got bad vibes. I didn't like it, and I didn't like the writing style. It felt so like, oh, look at me, I'm so special kind of writing, and it's kind of character and kind of thought pattern, like, oh, look at me and my misery, and I'm young, and I know so much. I don't know, it's ugh. I'm sure that there is a fantastic story if you like her writing, and yeah, so I didn't get very far in it at all, so I can't really speak to the story itself and the book itself. I'm sure it's great for a lot of people, but it didn't click for me, and I was just, no, this is not for me. So that was another DNF, unfortunately, for me. I also had Paperback Therapy by Tammi Miller, which is another nonfiction, and the point of this book is to sort of provide some basic therapeutic tools, I guess, or like some knowledge for people who maybe can't afford to see a therapist. And so I just figured that would be a good thing to put on every once in a while and, learn some things and feel a bit better. And I don't know. I don't think I've started that yet. I just haven't gotten around to it. So that's did not start. It's still on my audiobook app, so I might get to it at a later time, but it's not one that I am super keen to get to. There are so many other books that I feel excited about, and I'm really trying to follow my excitement and pick up the books that I want to read and try not to feel bad for failing at a reading event. So yeah, I'm putting that to the side for now and saving it for later. The book that I have gotten the furthest in, that's sort of tied to the Neurovember event, is The Unfortunates by J.K. Chukwu. And this is contemporary fiction, and it's written in a essay kind of format, or like dissertation format. It's about a young Black student who is going to a college of some kind where there are a lot of white privileged students and not a lot of Black students, and the Black students that are there keep disappearing in different ways, and then an email is sent out with unfortunate news. Those students are the unfortunates. This main character is dealing with depression and ADHD. I haven't really noticed an exploration of the ADHD part yet. She does mention her depression quite a bit, but more as her life partner. She calls it her life partner. That's always there, and it's sometimes kind of a separate character that talks to her with negative thoughts. Other than that, it has a quite like sarcastic tone or like angry tone, and just pointing out the stupid things that go on and racist things that people say, and just, you know, systematic things that are not in favor of the Black students. There's not much of a plot yet, as far as I can tell. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a mystery, and like students are disappearing and what's happening to them, and it's not really that. It's more of a just sort of social commentary on these students quitting school for different reasons or quitting life for different reasons, and no one really seems to be that bothered. And like, of course, that's a problem, and it's an important issue, and yeah, it's just not really what I had expected from this particular book. But it is good. I'm about a third way through it, I think. I'm not sure I'm going to finish it because there are so many other books that I'm like really excited about, so I don't want to sort of waste my time with a book that I'm not enjoying, but I've also gotten far enough in this to want to keep going in it. Anyways, I'm not really sure, but that's the one that I've had the most success with so far. So that's something. Another book that I started that I can't remember when it was, I think it was in the beginning of November, was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I'm about a third of the way through that as well, or like a fourth or a third, somewhere around there. But I had to return it to the library, so I'm hoping to get that back soon in December. We'll see. I wasn't blown away by the start of it, and I was kind of annoyed by some things, and like the writing wasn't really consistent. Like there were a few places where I was like, wasn't that person sitting down and now she's standing up? But it you know, things like that were like inconsistent. And the magic system with the cards I felt was very like poorly explained. But I don't know, maybe that's just me and I'm not used to that kind of thing, or I misunderstood something in the beginning. I'm not really sure. I was very confused for a long time, and I was like, how many cards are there? Anyways, I still want to give that another shot and see where the story is going, because it was entertaining enough, and yeah, people are saying good things about it, so I want to give it a chance if I can get it back from the library. So I guess those are all of the bad news. And let's move on to the books that I did actually finish this month. The first one is The Blood Traitor by Lynette Noni, and this is the third and final part in the Prison Healer series, and it was consistent through part 3 as well. I thought it kept the same level of quality. It's not amazing, but it's a good enough time, and it's, you know, a good balance between, you know, a complex plot that has some intricacies, but it's still simple enough to understand and follow along and keep track of who everyone is. Everything is very like well explained and clear. It was a goal of mine to finish this series before the end of the year, so I'm very happy I did that. And yeah, that was just a good feeling of accomplishment. Now I can say that I have read a fantasy series this year, so good for me. And in terms of rating, I think it sticks at a 4 stars for me, in terms of enjoyment, and I think in quality as well. I think for the audience that it's meant for, and, you know, for what it is, I think it does it quite well. And yeah, that's enough about that, I think. The second book I finished was Us Against You by Fredrik Backman, and this is the second part in the Beartown series that we're reading for the book club, and so I will be talking about it in a lot more detail in that separate book club video. I didn't think it was as strong as the first book, Bear Town, but I still enjoyed it, and it was consistent in terms of writing style and emotional level. Well, not really, but for me, the first book was stronger in terms of like the storyline and the plot and the events that happened and the depth of it. This one had a little bit more different things happening and like a lot of things going on, and some new characters were introduced, and yeah, it was not as focused of a story, even though Bear Town is also like this tapestry of lots of different characters and lots of different little things going on at the same time, and like all of them are contributing to this one thing. In Us Against You, it was a little bit kind of two main stories that were a little bit connected, but not really. So yeah, it wasn't as focused, I thought, but I still enjoyed it. It was a little bit harder to get into, and I wasn't sure where it was going, and yeah, so it wasn't a 5-star read for me. I would say this was a 4-star read, but I still loved being back in that world and seeing the characters again, and a really good second part in the series. It did kind of feel like a book 2, like it's not as strong as the first book, and hopefully the third and final book will be a very strong finish. There was a little bit of neurodivergence represented, I thought, so for Neurovember that was good. It's not really stated explicitly, I don't think, but there is a character who is not really getting social cues and social codes and thinks about things a little bit differently. So the way I read it, she was on the autism spectrum. And there's also another character who I suspect might have ADHD, and sort of had difficulty with attention and sort of energy management, and getting into some trouble for that. I felt like it was implied that those two characters were dealing with that, one very successfully and one maybe needed a little bit more help and guidance to use that to their advantage and in positive ways. So yeah, that's a book that I finished and enjoyed, and let's move on to the next one. So the next book I finished was Birdeye by Judith Hennigan. And this was a very anticipated read for me. It's a new release and it sounded very interesting to me. It's set at a commune in upstate New York, in present day. But this commune was started in the 70s, I think, and is now well past its heyday. But the founder, Liz, is still living there with a couple of other people who were also there from the start. And one day a stranger arrives, a young man, and you know, it's a matter of who you can trust and should you just let whoever into your space and things like that. And yeah, that just intrigued me a lot. It also sounded very mysterious to me. I was very curious to see who this stranger was. And there was also going to be an announcement by the friends, and like, what was that announcement going to be? And everything was just going to be like turned upside down, and what's going to happen? All of that is true. It might not be as dramatic as I made it out to be in my head. It's a pretty quiet story and a quiet novel. There is drama and intrigue there, and it's very well written. I really enjoyed reading this. So the main character is Liz. She's the founder of this commune called Birdeye. The house is called Birdeye because there's a window up in the attic that's in a round shape and it looks like a bird eye. I don't know. There are also birds mentioned throughout the book, which I thought was a nice touch. It just kind of enforced the name a little bit and added some like nature to it. It's set in the Catskill Mountains, and it's a very small community and a lot of like mountain hiking and woods around, and there's a river and things like that, and some neighbors to deal with. And yeah, Bliss is a cancer survivor, so that's also an element of this story. And she has 2 adult twin daughters who are in their 40s, I think. One of them is a lawyer in London, and the other one is living at Birdeye, and she has some kind of a disability from birth. She had the cord wrapped around her neck, and so there was like an oxygen deficit to her brain, and so she needs a lot of assistance. She's non-verbal, and she just needs help with daily living, and yeah, that's an aspect of the story too, and how to best care for her and her sort of actions and reactions to people and the events that are going on, and as this stranger comes there. And yeah, that's just a very important aspect to the story as well, which I thought was interesting because that's something that I don't really see a lot of in the books that I have read previously. So that's an aspect. And then this stranger, of course, Connor, who comes to Birdeye, and yeah, what does he want and what is he doing there? And is he trustworthy? What's his agenda? Is there an agenda? Is it paranoia to think that he has an agenda? It has that element of like, who can you trust? And yeah, there is suspense in this book, but it's very subtle and sort of in the background. And yeah, it's not a thriller by any means. It's more like secrets from the past, and who can you trust, and what do people really mean, and what do people really want, and yeah, the thoughts of Liz. And yeah, there are a few different perspectives in the story, but it's mostly from Liz's perspective, and then we get glimpses from Connor and from Mary, who is the daughter who's a lawyer in London. So it was kind of what I expected it to be. It wasn't as dramatic as I maybe had hoped. It was a little bit more low-key and slower paced, but I really liked the writing style and the characters, and the dialogue I felt was very like believable and natural, especially since these characters have been with each other for so long and they know each other so well, and so they can say very little and still say very much. And I think that we as readers are let in on that in a good way, without it being like explaining too much, this means that because that had happened before. I don't think this is for everyone, but I enjoyed it. And if you like a slower paced kind of character study, and maybe a book with characters that aren't seen a lot in books, and there's no like typical trope in this as far as I can see, it's just a little peek into these characters' lives and what happens, and some events that are very big for them, but it's not like this whole big dramatic story and plot for the reader. It's, you know, it's important things to them. There are some things that might be sensitive to some people, I think, like the fact that she is a cancer survivor. There are also pets that have died, and there's also some other things that I don't want to get into because I feel like that's a spoiler to the story. So there's nothing like horrible, and it's nothing like, well, it is kind of horrible, but it's dealt with very delicately. It's not an in-your-face kind of book in any way, so it's all very low-key and gentle. But I just wanted to mention that there are a couple of those things in here, just so that you know. And yeah, I would recommend it, but to a specific kind of reader, I think. The next book is one that I have been wanting to read for a long time, but I didn't know that I was going to read it in November. But the library hold came through, and so I decided to read it. And that was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. And yeah, that was an experience. I don't want to say very much about the story itself, but the premise is that it's a girl who is trapped in a cage with 39 other women, and none of them know how they got there or why they're there or what is outside of the cage. I don't want to say anything other than that because I think this is a story that is very good and that I would recommend that you read. but I don't want to say what kind of genre it is even, because I feel like that's a spoiler. I saw someone hold this up on a thumbnail of like a specifically themed video, and like books that are like this, and I'm like, that spoils the whole story, and like, no. So I don't want to say much at all about this book other than I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm so happy I finally got around to reading it. And yeah, it's not a very long book either, so if you're curious, you can definitely fit this in. And yeah, it was a very good book. So those are all of the full-length novels that I finished this month, and then I have 2 short stories. One of them is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and this is another story that I have been wanting to read for a long time and that I've heard people say good things about. It's about a woman who is not feeling her best, and there's a yellow wallpaper, and, you know, decline from there. I listened to this on audiobook the other day, and I was very absorbed by it, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely see why it's such a widely read and loved story. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend that you do that. It was very short. I think it was about 40 minutes on audiobook, and yeah, I thought it was great. I've heard it described as horror, and there might be a little touch of that, but it's not horror throughout the whole story, and it wasn't too bad for me, so I think if I can handle it, you probably can too. And yeah, the other short story that I read was a brand new story by Fredrik Backman. The answer is no. This has a very different vibe from all of the other books that I read this month, but I think it was the perfect sort of cherry on top my reading month. This is an absurd and hilarious short story about a young man called Lucas. He lives in an apartment, but he wants as little contact with other people as possible. He likes to play video games, and he likes to eat pad thai, and he would live in the woods if it wasn't for the fact that it's very hard to get fast food delivered. So he lives in an apartment, and then one day the board of this apartment building complex thing come knocking because someone has left a frying pan on the ground by the bins, and that's not allowed, and we have to investigate. Lucas makes the mistake of opening the door and interacting with these people, and from there disaster ensues. And yeah, I loved this little short story. It was very relatable to me as an introvert who would not appreciate someone knocking on my door. If you have liked the sense of humor in Fredrik Backman's other books and those like observations about people and how there's like a little detail mentioned and then an absurd description of that, and it just tells you everything you need to know about a person. This story has a lot of that, and sort of taken to the ridiculous. Like the whole story is kind of ridiculous and absurd, but it also has like those heartfelt moments and that like social commentary in a very funny way. And yeah, I was just giggling and crying, laughing at some points. And yeah, I just thought it was really funny and very relatable. And yeah, I felt a lot for the main character. It's a really funny story, so yeah, if you like his sense of humor, I think that you would appreciate this, and especially if you are an introvert yourself, I think you can relate to the main character in a lot of ways. I actually read this through NetGalley, which was great. I've just been trying out, sort of requesting some books that seem interesting to me, and I was approved for this one, and I was very happy about that. And, I loved it, and it was a very fun time for me to read a book for free for the very first time. I'm in such a weird mood today, and I have been talking for forever, so I think I need to wrap this video up now. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching and sticking with me through this weird video. I feel like maybe it wasn't weird, anyways, I don't know. I'm gonna stop now. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.